It's the late 19th century, and the air in the small Italian town of Florence hums with the whispers of antiquity. A woman, tall and imposing, strides purposefully down the cobblestone streets, a notebook tucked under her arm and her mind aflame with thoughts. This is Vernon Lee, or rather, Violet Paget, the name she was born with but chose to sidestep. Vernon Lee, a name that rings with authority and mystique, a name chosen to pierce through the rigid constraints of her era. But who was she really, this unconventional figure who poured her soul into words, and what were the motivations that drove her through the labyrinth of life? To understand Vernon Lee, one must first step into her world, a world of art, ideas, and rebellion against societal norms. Born in 1856 in Boulogne-sur-Mer, France, Lee's early life was one of movement and exposure. Her family, intellectual and peripatetic, roamed Europe, exposing young Violet to the treasures of art galleries, ancient ruins, and the ever-changing beauty of landscapes. But it wasn't just the sights that shaped her, it was the sense of freedom. The world was her classroom, and curiosity her constant companion. A heart for beauty. Imagine Vernon Lee as a child, standing in the echoing halls of a Roman cathedral. She's transfixed, her eyes wide, as sunlight filters through stained glass, scattering colors on the cold stone floor. To her, this isn't just a place of worship, it's a symphony of form and light, a testament to human creativity and devotion. This moment, and countless others like it, would ignite a lifelong love affair with beauty. Lee's work often reads like an ode to aesthetics. In her essays and stories, she dissected the ways in which art and nature stir the soul. For instance, in The Spirit of Rome, she wrote not just about the physical beauty of the city but about the almost mystical connection between the viewer and the scene. In The Enchanted Woods, she explored how landscapes and their stories intertwine, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. But it wasn't beauty for beauty's sake, she sought to understand its essence. Why does a painting move us to tears? How can a melody evoke a memory we didn't even know we had? These questions consumed her, driving her to pen essays that examined the philosophical underpinnings of aesthetics. To Lee, beauty was not just a surface quality but a profound experience that connected humans to the transcendent. Her motivation here was clear: she believed that beauty had the power to elevate human consciousness. In an age of industrialization and materialism, where machines churned out progress at the expense of the sublime, Vernon Lee was a voice in the wilderness, urging humanity to pause, to look, to feel. She wanted people to see beauty not as a luxury but as an essential element of a fulfilled life. The life of the mind. Lee's intellectual pursuits were as boundless as her appreciation for beauty. Picture her in her study, surrounded by books, her pen scratching against paper as she dives into philosophy, psychology, and the arts. Her thoughts spilled across genres, defying categorization. She wrote about the science of emotions, the philosophy of aesthetics, and even ventured into fiction, crafting ghost stories that were as much psychological explorations as they were tales of the supernatural. Her fascination with psychology, especially the burgeoning concept of empathy, set her apart. Long before empathy became a buzzword, Vernon Lee was exploring its depths. She proposed that our emotional responses to art and the world around us are rooted in an innate ability to connect with something outside ourselves. In her essay, Beauty and Ugliness, she examined how humans project their feelings onto objects, creating a kind of emotional dialogue with the external world. Lee also delved into the intersection of aesthetics and morality. Could beauty make us better people? Could art foster a sense of shared humanity? These were the questions that drove her, and her answers often revealed a profound optimism. She believed that the act of understanding and appreciating beauty was, in itself, a moral act, a way of transcending selfishness and connecting with others. And yet, her intellectual pursuits weren't merely academic. They were deeply personal. To Lee, understanding the mind and its responses to beauty was a way of understanding herself and the world. Her motivation: to illuminate the hidden workings of the human psyche, revealing the connections that bind us all. A rebel against norms. Now imagine Vernon Lee at a gathering in London, her sharp wit cutting through the smoke-filled air. She's dressed simply, her manner direct, a stark contrast to the corseted women around her. Lee was not one for conformity. She lived as she pleased, often shocking Victorian society with her independence and unconventional lifestyle. Lee never married, a choice that was both deliberate and defiant. In a society that equated a woman's worth with her marital status, she carved out a space for herself as an intellectual and an artist. Her relationships with women, including her close bond with Mary Robinson, were deep and complex, challenging the era's rigid views on love and companionship. To many, her lifestyle was scandalous; to her, it was simply honest. Her decision to adopt a male pen name was another act of rebellion. Vernon Lee wasn't just a pseudonym, it was a statement. It allowed her to enter intellectual circles that might otherwise have been closed to her and gave her the freedom to write with authority. She rejected the limitations imposed on women of her time, not just in her writing but in her life. Her motivation here was twofold: to live authentically and to challenge societal norms that stifled individuality. By doing so, she not only claimed her own freedom but also inspired others to question the roles imposed upon them. Lee's life was a living argument for the value of intellectual and personal independence. The ethics of living. In her later years, Vernon Lee became increasingly concerned with the ethical implications of art and culture. She was critical of materialism and imperialism, seeing them as forces that eroded the richness of human experience. Her writings often grappled with the tension between cultural appreciation and exploitation, urging readers to approach the world with a sense of responsibility. Picture her in Florence, walking through a market where trinkets and treasures from around the world are sold. To some, these are mere objects; to Lee, they are stories, stories of people, places, and histories that demand respect. She understood that true appreciation required understanding and care, not just consumption. This ethical perspective extended to her views on tourism. While she appreciated the value of travel and cultural exchange, she was wary of the ways in which tourism could degrade the very cultures it sought to celebrate. She called for a more thoughtful approach, one that prioritized respect and understanding over superficial enjoyment. Her motivation here was clear: to inspire a more thoughtful, ethical approach to life. She believed that beauty and culture could enrich humanity only if approached with reverence and responsibility. To Lee, the ethical life was one that balanced appreciation with action, ensuring that one's enjoyment of the world contributed to its preservation rather than its destruction. Keeper of the past. Lee's connection to history was visceral. She saw the past not as something dead and buried but as a living presence, a source of wisdom and inspiration. Her writings often evoke a sense of timelessness, as if she were conversing with the ghosts of those who came before her. In her essays, she brought historical figures to life, exploring their thoughts and feelings with empathy and imagination. She wrote about the Renaissance as if she had walked its streets, her words painting vivid pictures of its triumphs and tragedies. For Lee, history wasn't just a series of events, it was a tapestry of human experience, rich with lessons and beauty. Her fascination with the past extended to her surroundings. Living in Florence, she was immersed in a city steeped in history, where every street and building had a story to tell. She wrote about these stories, weaving them into her own reflections on art and culture. Her motivation: to preserve and reinterpret the past, ensuring that its lessons and beauty weren't lost to the relentless march of time. The pursuit of empathy. At the heart of Vernon Lee's life and work was a profound empathy for people, for art, for the world. She believed that empathy was the key to connection, the force that allowed us to transcend our individual experiences and tap into something greater. Her explorations of empathy were groundbreaking. She proposed that our emotional responses to art were a form of connection, a way of stepping into another's world. This idea resonated deeply with her own experiences as a writer and thinker. For Lee, every piece of art, every historical figure, every landscape was an invitation to understand and to feel. Her personal relationships reflected this commitment to empathy. Though she could be sharp-tongued and critical, those who knew her best often spoke of her warmth and depth of feeling. She sought to understand those around her, even when their views clashed with her own. This empathy extended to her writing, where she strove to bridge the gap between self and other, inviting readers to see the world through her eyes. Her motivation here was deeply personal. She sought to bridge the gap between self and other, using empathy as a tool for connection and understanding. For Vernon Lee, empathy wasn't just an ideal, it was a practice, a way of engaging with the world that brought meaning and richness to life. A legacy of inspiration. Vernon Lee's life was a tapestry of motivations, each thread woven with care and intention. She was driven by a love of beauty, a thirst for knowledge, a commitment to authenticity, and a deep sense of responsibility. Her writings continue to inspire, offering insights into the human experience and the power of art and ideas. In the end, Vernon Lee's motivations were profoundly human. She sought to understand, to connect, to create. And in doing so, she left a legacy that transcends time, inviting us all to look at the world, and ourselves, with fresh eyes and open hearts.